and we want to continue to kind of talk about that damage, and I'm going to hand it over to Mitch now with kind of what he's seen today.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon, and if you're just joining us on mypanhandle.com, we are broadcasting live from Callaway, where we are really able for the first time to bring you live pictures from this town, where we are starting to get a really clear picture to the restoration efforts that are now underway to get business back to normal. And there's still a long way to go. We're able to, through some of our various technologies, we're able to show you a bird's eye view to exactly what has happened here from Hurricane Michael. And that includes some of the destruction, which also includes the goodwill that is right across the street from us. Because those winds were so strong, it knocked down tons of power poles, which knocked out electricity. It also knocked out any form of communication for people. So there's still tons of work to be done here in Callaway. We are broadcasting live until 4. That is when at the 5 o'clock hour, we're going to bring it over to Panama City, where a lot of our crew there at WMBB is standing by, and we'll be able to bring that to you here at the 5 o'clock hour. But still a lot of work to be done, and we are here to show you a lot of the destruction here and the work that still has to be done, which includes power poles and getting some kind of electricity and a form of communication like cell phones and telephones back in business. So, yeah. Keith, you've been taking a look at some of this.
Just so folks know, I checked with the utility crews. These lines are not live, so that way I could be safe by showing you. All right, here's one of the power poles that was down. All right, you got a step-down transformer. It's going from 880 volts to 440 to 220 down to 110 usable. Every one of these on every single pole needs to be replaced. Kyle, if you pan up, all those poles you see have all been replaced. This is a very manpower-intensive operation. Every single pole has to be replaced. We have one on the ground ready to go in here. Take a look at the size of some of these distributor lines. I mean, these things are what powers the communities out here. All right. They've got to get all of these wires back up before they can even think about turning on the grid. And down here, Mitch, hold this mic. Okay. This is Ma Bell. This is full of telephone lines. So these all have to be replaced before we have communication back on landlines. And a lot of times, Mitch, those landlines actually go to the cell phone towers. So communication is still a big issue here.
Which is also why we're using satellite phones to have any kind of communication with the station. I want to reiterate something, since we're talking about electricity not working. It means stoplights are out. Treat all of those as a four-way stop. Kyle, if you can pan to your right, we're seeing a first responder come through. They've had a difficult time getting from place to place, and some of that is through these intersections where they're being treated as four-way stops. So we're seeing a lot of first responders, and they're not from Callaway. They're various communities from across Florida and really across the Southeast. We've seen crews and first responders all the way from Tennessee. So obviously still tons of work. But Keith, I'd like to point out, because you mentioned those poles that are now being put up. Right. That is not just along here, Tyndall Parkway. We've seen that throughout the city of Callaway and really all across Panama City.
You've got 2 full counties. And if you can imagine the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles of lines that go from house to house, from major distribution poles to the minor distribution poles in the neighborhoods, every one of those, Mitch, every single one takes time to do. And I know it's very frustrating for folks, but we're seeing a lot of progress here. I mean, this looks a whole lot different today than what we saw when we drove through here yesterday on the way to Mexico Beach. They're making progress. There's power crews from, if you're watching anywhere in the country, chances are, Mitch, that there's a power crew from where you live down here helping out.
Oh, absolutely. And what's really special to see is all of these crews that are working together. This is something that they're trained to do. This is something that they go through tons of training for. This is something that at the end of the day, they know if something like this happens, they know how the grids work to get power restored as quickly as possible. And that's something really special to see when you can look down a road and you see truck after truck after truck next to these poles. And the fact that they have, I'm seeing just a dozen right here where I'm standing, and yeah, that is significant progress.
And I think Toby might have showed us, the parking lot where it's a staging ground. All these utility crews are working in concert. There's a disaster plan. It's well rehearsed, well worked out. and they're going to continue to work hard to get out there. But every one of those telephone poles you have seen in the parking lot from time to time when you're looking at these overhead shots, they've got to come from somewhere. They need thousands and thousands and thousands of them, Mitch. So, give them some breadth on the roadway, give them some room, and help them to get through to get these communities back on their feet, because, exercise a lot of courtesy is what I'm saying. And we've been driving around town, and you know what? Doing the right thing goes a long way. Make sure you're coming to a stop.
If we can, Kyle, can you pan over? Well, now the truck's blocking it. This is the courtesy we're talking about. You just mentioned it. This gentleman in the construction vest blocked traffic for a woman that was carrying a cart with water and ice. The truck is now blocking it, but that right there is the courtesy that you are talking about. And when we're talking about courtesies, it's not just the folks in traffic safety vests, it's also the folks that have come from all over the country to lend a hand in the middle of a disaster. And it doesn't matter if you're from Florida, it doesn't matter if you're from the other side of the country, like Indiana. People are coming from all over Florida to help people out.